co-conspirator, James Andrews here. And we continue to do this to bring together storytellers, activists, and healers who want to create change to end racism, police brutality, social injustices. And we come together to create bridges for conversations and healing as well, which is why mindfulness and meditation is so important as we begin and end these conversations. Today's theme, because we do a different theme every time we do this, is returning citizens, democracy, and voting. And I'm so excited to have our two featured guests. Desmond Meade joins us as well. I want to say hi there, spotlight your video. Hello, Desmond.
Hey, how are you?
Good. And I want to read both of your bios just because you both do such incredible things, just to introduce who we're talking to today. And of course, this is an interactive virtual town hall. We want to hear from you in the chat. Let us know what you think. Invite friends. We want to make sure as many people can be impacted by these two individuals as possible and hear what they are sharing and what they're up to. But Desmond Meade is the author of Let My People Vote, formerly homeless, returning citizen who overcame many obstacles to eventually become the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, FRRC. He's the chair of the Floridians for a Fair Democracy, a graduate of Florida International University College of Law, and a Ford Global Fellow. I mean, come on, if that's not enough. He was recognized by Time Magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2019. And so much is going on he's involved with. I'm trying to continue down this bio. As president and executive director of FRRC, which is recognized for its work on voting and criminal justice reform issues, Desmond led the FRRC to a historic victory in 2018 with the successful passage of Amendment 4, a grassroots citizens initiative which restored voting rights to over 1.4 million Floridians with past felony convictions. I mean, that's incredible. Amendment 4 represented the single largest expansion of voting rights in the US in half a century and brought an end to 150 years of Jim Crow era laws in Florida. So Desmond, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And let's move also on to Gina. I didn't get to say her bio as well and where she comes from. She has spent her life in the arenas of entertainment and activism where her professional work thrives today. She's the executive director of Sankofa.org, a social justice organization that educates, motivates, and activates artists and allies in service of grassroots movements and equitable change. Gina works with diverse artists, activists, and organizations worldwide to promote cultural and civic engagement. She also has many documentaries and movies and media out there that I'm sure she'll also mention here today, but definitely inspiring. And both of our guests are doing incredible things as we continue to deal with everything happening in real time here in the US. And also leading up to an election that is more important than ever before. So thank you to both of you. James, do you want to say anything? Where is James? Over there. All right, well, he'll come in when he's ready because I think he's having some tech. So as we get going, we are close to the election, as everyone knows, and there's more uncertainty than ever before. What are each of you doing in your own activism right now around the vote? Desmond, do you want to start with you?
Wow. Yeah, a ton, right? I tell my folks that right now, our number one business is actually saving democracy. At the end of the day, when we started the year out, I remember meeting with my team and talking about how this country is really is at a crossroads, and the democracy as we know it hangs in the balance. And then maybe a month or two later, with the situation with the Iraqi general getting murdered or assassinated, I realized that it goes beyond the fate of a democracy in this country. We're talking about really the fate of the world really hangs in the balance, from everything from the environment all the way on down. And so, when I know in my lifetime, I have yet to see anyone get into the White House without winning the state of Florida. And so we're moving forward as if Florida is center to this year's election. And if Florida is center, then that means that the work that my organization is doing sits at its epicenter or at its core, because we were the ones that led the movement to re-enfranchise 1.4 million people with past felony convictions. And in the state of Florida, where we've seen the 2000 presidential election that was decided by less than 600 votes. And subsequent presidential elections thereafter was decided by approximately 100,000 votes. Being able to re-enfranchise 1.4 million people with past felony convictions would definitely impact or actually shift the landscape, not only in Florida, but for the rest of the country. And it would also, I think, create a base from which we can really bring about substantive criminal justice reform, because the people who are most closest to the pain would be positioned to actually lead the solution efforts. And so all of our time and energy and efforts is concentrated on how are we empowering these people that have just been liberated by the passing of Amendment 4, right, and turning them out and making sure that they're getting their voices heard and dictating the direction of this country.
Hey, Desmond, it's James. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, I got my setup. My setup is not as fancy as yours. You look like you're doing interviews every day in that fancy studio there. But listen, all jokes aside, for those of us that are listening in the state of Florida, when you think about Florida, there's many different Floridas. There is, it feels like there's a dissection of Florida that's not all Miami, as we all know,
it's
right?
3 in 1, 3 states in one, James.
3 states in one. So we're about action on this show. We're about getting things done, and we all have relationships. What are some hot spots, areas for us that we can think about in Florida that we could be supportive? Are there particular cities or regions or counties that we could be thinking about?
So I'm glad you said that, right? So let me give you
Opalaka.
Somebody said Opalaka. That was you, Gina?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we were supposed to, a few years back, we were supposed to do that big fair at the airport there in Opalaka. I remember that, that community fair around social justice. But no, when I looked at it, one of the things that Amendment 4 did, let me show you. So Florida, a lot of folks say Florida is 3 different states, right, yeah, in one. But what we did with Amendment 4 was we made it one state, right? We was quite possibly the only ballot initiative that was able to poll well in every major media market in the state of Florida, right? And when we passed Amendment 4, it passed in every House district in the state. And so we brought together people from all races. We brought together people from all walks of life, all political preferences, and we organized them along the lines of humanity, right? And we powered this amendment through with the most powerful force that there is, and that's love, right? And in that process, what we found was that traditionally, you would actually, and that's why when people try to label us like a bipartisan or non-partisan campaign, we rejected that, right? How we identified ourselves was an organic grassroots movement that welcomed and enjoyed bipartisan support. And the significance of that is that we didn't lead with the politics. We led with the people, right? And we was able to connect along the human rights lines, and not just voting rights or racial rights, but human rights, which is a much broader umbrella that's able to draw people in. Mm-hmm. In that process, though, we understood that traditionally we've been limiting who we can talk to. And when we limit who we can talk to, we limit who we don't talk to, right? And what we ignore or end up overlooking was that there are very strong pockets of Black and brown communities throughout the state of Florida. And it's not just in Dade County. It's not just in Broward or Palm Beach, but man, you could go to Putnam County, you could go to Taylor County and find a sizable population of Black and brown people that has been largely ignored, right? And so we've been able to identify those pockets, and listen, we're like diving all the way in. We're finding out people where they're at, right? And we're bringing people together along the lines of humanity. But when you talk about action items, right? Let me tell you, a tweet don't know any boundaries. An Instagram post don't know any boundaries. And we have people throughout this entire state that needs to hear voices of social influencers. We need to hear voices of celebrities saying that, wait a minute, that barrier, that 150-year-old Jim Crow barrier that was in place in Florida has now been destroyed. And in spite of whatever litigation might be going on, in spite of whatever legislation might be in place right now, the fact remains that embedded in the state constitution is an alternative way to be able to vote in this country without having to grovel at the feet of any politician. Right. And there is a pathway there for people who previously didn't have any, because Florida had enacted a policy that banned a person from voting for the rest of their life. That is no longer there. And there is a pathway to freedom. And in spite of whatever obstacles might seemingly be in place, that we can overcome those obstacles. And we can finally, as a people, really stand up and take ownership of our communities, take ownership of our state, and actually transform this country. And so if you want an action item, man, listen, all you got to do is email ambassadors at FloridaRRC.org. That's ambassadors at FloridaRRC.org. And man, we got a toolkit that's going to make it so simple. Copy and paste, tweet, copy and paste, put your Instagram, and you can get some nice swag like what I got. And in the middle of this discussion, I'm actually going to do a wardrobe change. And I know I'm not going to have a malfunction. You could believe me on that. But I'm going to do a wardrobe change so folks can see that, guess what? We could be safe in COVID.
Yes. Oh, I need one of those.
And still spread the word that we've got to let our people vote. And when we let our people vote, the change that we've been yearning for all these years, we will see.
Wow.
I got a great mask that says "Grab them by the ballot."
I like that.
Can I hit on something that we were?
Yeah, go for it.
Here, great
conversation. Yeah.
This is such great information, and thank you for all that you do. It's really, really important, especially because in building power, we have to have these conversations so people know who's doing what where, so we can build upon what each other's doing. There's so much intersectionality and crossover and a lot of the stuff that's going on. I mean, I wanted to talk also about, like, when you're in jail and you're innocent until proven guilty, you're still not able to vote because they have no systems in place for those who are in jail, not prison, but jail, waiting to vote. So that's another area too, where there's a lot of votes, especially in some of these swing states where they would make a difference for opportunities for folks to vote. And then also you said something about, is it called Amendment 4?
Yes, it's Amendment 4.
Okay, yes, because I mean, Florida, Florida's interesting. And I have this sort of feeling in Florida and other states where people like are in those swing states where I have an image of someone sitting on a fence and all these protesters going by and just saying, "Get off the fence." You know what I mean? There's so much work that goes into a campaign, and there's so much, it takes so much to get a bill passed or amendment forward. I just have to commend you. I just have to really, really commend you for that, to organize that way and be able to put that forward. It's tremendous. So, I wanted to see if I could just say a little bit about sort of youth incarceration as well, because we have a lot of young people who are eligible to vote and in child prisons. I think some of us call it juvenile hall. But, there is a great organization called Creative Acts that goes in, that we partner with, and we do something called Art Attacks. And I'm actually going to be a teaching artist next week in juvenile hall, where we use art as a tool to help young people bring forward their voice and understand how important their voice is and how much they matter and what their vote means. And I believe there was about 600 young people, I think it was last election, who registered to vote, because they do have that in place where they offer the young people an opportunity to register, but they don't really know what paper they're signing. They have no relationship to it. So only about 35 people from that 600 or so that they registered actually voted. But once Art Attacks went in and was able to help young people understand the difference between a judge and a district attorney, and see the down ballot opportunities for them to really engage in their own personal community, I think it rose to almost 85 to 90% of the kids the following election, they went in and they voted. And that's huge. That's huge to give hope to our young people and patriate our young people too, and give them an opportunity to have a deeper connection to their community where they feel often so lost, which is what sometimes gets them in some hairy situations to begin with. And then one more thing I wanted to just talk about was some of the work that Sankofa.org is specifically doing. And that is, we are also just really hitting hard on getting the vote out and doing our best to work with groups, excuse me, to work with groups all over the country. We just finished doing a partnership with March for Our Lives and did Into Action, which we had 4 days of programming where it was centered around youth engagement and getting the vote out. And I don't know if you know, do you know Norris Henderson? Right, so Norris and Russell Craig and B. Mike and Donna Hilton all did a segment for us on Take Black the Vote, we called it, on the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And we talked about repatriation, and we talked about some of the barriers to entry and how important it is that we really understand more clearly how to get our mail-in ballots and what to do for those mail-in ballots, and trying to find ways to create legislation where there's voting machines inside facilities, and really honoring folks' right to vote. And just questions around, you know, Florida's voting rights and the opportunity to vote. We spoke specifically about that. And why is it important to vote? And does the voice matter? And all these different questions that was so important to hear from systems impacted people about their own perspectives around it. So we just did that. We're doing voting videos, which we're really excited about. We're working with young people between the ages of 18 to 25. And we're working with young poets and young animators, really to engage the peer-to-peer conversation around voting. And we're doing voting videos where we've just asked folks to send us their videos, just saying, looking into the camera and saying vote. So we've put a couple of those together. And we're also coming up and hopefully going to be able to pull off October 15th, a concert called Tu Música, Tu Voz, Tu Voto, where we're really honing in on the Latinx community and engaging our Latin and Indigenous brothers and sisters, and showing a real Black-Brown coalition to build power and to encourage our friends to get out and vote, and really just bringing a lot of unity around voting and just how important it is. All right, I'm going to drop the mic there because I've spoken quite a bit.
That's amazing. And we're going to have all the links also in our follow-up emails. We always include our guests again, where to find everyone, links to promote, and like just to check out to get more involved. So thank you for sharing all of that as well. And I know, like, we talk about all these things in Amendment 4, but yet even with this recent court ruling in Florida, Desmond, it's like still voter suppression. And it's like you can get so many steps ahead, but then it's like, and can you talk about this court ruling and how it's making people can't vote if they haven't paid their dues, like their court dues and like these tickets. And that's crazy, because it's like, how are you expected to keep up?
Yeah, so I want to address it, but I cannot move forward without acknowledging the fact that Gina's got me hyped. I don't know if you see me moving around and fidgeting and rubbing my hands, because she has dropped some real gems that I really do want to dive into, but it is connected.
So we can get to that after.
I'm going to connect your answer, but I got to dive into some of this stuff Gina talked about.
Awesome.
So once we passed Amendment 4, it was a Republican-dominated legislature and governor that decided that they wanted to create implementation language for Amendment 4, even though it wasn't needed. And in the process of doing that, they codified the requirement to pay certain legal financial obligations in order for someone to be able to register to vote. And there are basically two types of legal financial obligations that's associated with a conviction. One is intimately connected to an offense someone has been convicted of. And you would see that show up in ways like a restitution or like a fine. But then you have the other type of LFOs that are administrative in nature. Those are like court costs and fees and all kinds of crazy charges that can pile up, and it's basically the cost of doing business in court. And so they grouped all of these things together, and they said, okay, you've got to pay those before you could actually register to vote. The ACLU, along with the Legal Defense Fund, Brennan Center for Justice, Southern Poverty Law Center, they banded together and they filed suit against the state, claiming that the state basically was trying to make people pay to be able to vote. And they won this case in the Northern District in federal court, where the judge was like, yo, you know, most of this stuff that y'all talking about is nothing but a poll tax and unconstitutional. And then you might have some stuff over here that might be halfway legit, but you know, at the essence of this democracy, at the essence of what voting is about is that if someone is too poor to afford to pay that, that should not be a barrier to them being able to vote, right? And we knew through testimony from experts that out of the 1.4 million people who Amendment 4 immediately helped, around 774,000 individuals had some type of legal financial obligations. The overwhelming majority of them, their legal financial obligations was caught up, not in the restitution, not in the fines, but in these obscure fees and court costs that the state tax on to try to make its citizens fund its court system because the state don't want to spend the money to do so, right? And so once the judge ruled and said, you know, that got to go, poor people should have unencumbered access to the ballot box. The state, of course, appealed to the 11th Circuit. And when they appealed to the 11th Circuit, the 11th Circuit issued a stay, which meant that the judge's order in the lower courts could not remain in effect. And therefore, folks was still stuck in having to pay fines and fees before they're able to register to vote. The 11th Circuit just issued its ruling a couple of days ago, siding with the state and overturned the lower court's ruling. And so basically we are right back to where we've been operating, and that is identifying the 774,000 people and helping them pay their fines and fees. Unfortunately, they've created, we live in a state now in Florida that feels it's okay to force someone to choose between having to put food on their kid's plate or voting, or paying rent or mortgage and voting. And they're basically holding democracy hostage, right? But throughout this process, we have remained optimistic. I guess it's part of our DNA. You know, at the beginning, Gina invoked the spirits of our ancestors. And let me tell you, right? And from what our ancestors have gone through, this is nothing, right? For what our ancestors have been able to overcome, this is nothing. And while some folks may just look at it solely as a setback, I see it as an opportunity for us to step up. And that's exactly what's been happening, right? People like Michael Jordan and LeBron, and you have corporations that are just pitching in. And then, Gina, I'm gonna go to you. We got NBA that's throwing down, right? And I want to throw just a slight dig at the NFL. While the NFL is worried about singing the Black National Anthem, the NBA is actually seriously investing in grassroots organizations to bring about substantive change. And so you have the Orlando Magic that partner with our organization, and we came up with a campaign, said, get off the bench and get in the game, right? Get off the bench and get in the game. Or we did a PSA with Sammy Watkins that talks about get off the sideline, get in the game. And LeBron James, more than a vote, that's part of that message. Because here's the deal. when we see all the destruction that's been going on in our country from COVID-19 and the killing of black and brown bodies and men and women, and we're seeing the protests and we're seeing infiltrators exasperating the protesters, and you're seeing fires all around this country, you know, and it can be depressing, but, you know, I actually became inspired. I looked at this as divine synchronization, because here we have, you know, I'm looking at these fires and I'm thinking out of these ashes are going to emerge a renewed phoenix of hope, right? And we're seeing these young people with an energy that we've never seen before. But here's the beautiful part. And Gina, you talked to this, and that's why you got me hyped. Because when we talk about Ahmaud Arbery, there was a prosecutor that took over 70 days to even press charges against the people that murdered this guy right in the middle of the street. When you talk about a police chief or a sheriff that allows an environment to fester in his department, that where an officer could put his knee on a person's neck and just take the life from him in broad daylight and look right into the camera with a hand in his pocket like it's okay. Right. And when you see these judges that are allowing these atrocities to be rained down, and these prosecutors that are not reform-minded, right, all of these individuals are elected. And the people that have the most intimate understanding of that knee on their neck, I've had the knees on my neck as a returning citizen. I've had the guns drawn on me because I look too dark. I've had the pistol split my skull, right, in a takedown, an excessive force. And I've had boots slammed into my head while I was handcuffed on the ground. And so returning citizens have the most intimate knowledge of the powers of the prosecutors and judges, of the powers of the sheriffs. And we're the same people that just got empowered. And so all of the stars, right, I have aligned. And even the young people coming up and understanding this, and the young people themselves losing the right to vote before they're even old enough to vote, right? Because we try to, with the school to prison pipeline, we're stripping our kids of the right to vote prematurely, right? And so when you see all of these things coming together, right, it may look chaotic, it may look depressing, but to me, it looks promising. It looks promising. When I look in Florida, that judge might have said, yeah, you know what? Make them pay to register. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we're going to do. We have patriots across this country and ambassadors across this country that are stepping up and refusing to allow democracy to be held hostage in Florida. That to me is encouraging, because listen, what we're talking about and what we're envisioning is not that old democracy, because that old democracy had us as slaves. That old democracy allowed institutionalized racism to fester. What we're talking about is being able to dare to dream about a new democracy, right, that will respect people no matter what the color of their skin, no matter what their sexual identity is, no matter what their immigration status is, no matter what their socioeconomic status, that we're all human beings deserving of dignity and respect. Right. And we have an opportunity right now to bring about that change, to start that new course. Right. And I think it starts right here in Florida. That's why it's so important, because all of those factors that you're talking about, Gina, is evident here. This is the Florida of Trayvon Martin. This is the Florida of Brian Jordan. This is the Florida of Stand Your Ground. This is the Florida of Hanging Chad. Right? This is that Florida right there, but this is also the Florida of Amendment 4, right? And so there is hope on the horizon, and we know that it's going to take everybody collectively coming together, understanding that what you're contributing to in Florida is not for Florida, it's for yourself. Because as Florida goes, so does the rest of the country, and so does the rest of the world.
You got me hyped, goddammit.
Yeah,
But let's get hyped then. Let's get hyped.
So passionate. It's
Gina
so
started
great.
that. Gina started that. I just want to know. Gina started that.
Well, between
go ahead, Jay.
No, I just said between the both. I just want to, first of all, just give you, both of you. You guys are in the trenches. We are here to support the work that you guys are doing. You invigorate us in a way, and that's why we do this. That's what this is about. Welcome to the Other America. This is essentially not just another Zoom meeting. This is not just another Zoom call. This is an opportunity for us to galvanize our resources, organize our network. We know that our network is our net worth, where our network is full of relationships and action items. And many of us on this call, many of you who will be listening to this on because we record these, will be called after both Gina and Desmond, called to do something. And we're going to share all that information. Gina, your framing around the arts, I think, is so important, and the idea of young people. I think I want to make sure that we tap on that. And just because of your background of the arts, there is a role for you, the artist, who there is a role for the arts. And I think it sometimes gets overlooked. For those of us that are in the creative space, many folks that will be watching this come from the creative space. So I want to make sure we don't miss that. And then Desmond, you better preach that word. It's just too important, Florida. And we know it. I am not in Florida. I am the dad of a University of Miami Kane graduate, but that is about as close as I got to being in Florida. But I do recognize the importance of Florida. We recognize the importance of Florida. So we want to support you. And we're going to, this isn't just a one night affair for us. We have literally, Shira and I are texting as you're talking on some other ideas. We know a big date's coming up this week. Did we cover that?
Voting.
Voting.
Yeah.
Voting. That's very significant, because once again, Gina kind of stirred that up, right? Because we just got through talking about Juneteenth, right?
Yeah.
And Gina, you stirred it up when you talked about the people that were in jail, in jails that have not been convicted yet, right? And then we have the bodies of young people who are out there in the streets that have the ability to vote. Juneteenth, the story around Juneteenth was that the slaves in Galveston, Texas, didn't find out that they were free until 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, Amendment 4 passed in 2018. We're actually coming up, ironically, on the 2-year anniversary of Amendment 4, and there's still hundreds of thousands of returning citizens that don't even know they're free yet, right? And that's why, we've got to let there folks that don't even know that Amendment 4 passed, much less what it is. And then even those that do know about Amendment 4, they either think that they might be in the crowd that have fines and fees. You got to remember, Amendment 4 emancipated 1.4 million returning citizens, right? 774,000 have fines and fees. So that leaves about 600,000 returning citizens that don't have fines and fees that can register to vote right now. 600,000, right? And so we have folks that think that they may owe, and they have gone back to feeling that they can't do anything. And then you have folks that may be confused by a lot of the back and forth with the litigation and the legislation. And so what Vote-Teenth seeks to do is employ every one of you all, right, that's listening and looking in right now, as well as other high-profile people like a Kerry Washington and her group, whether we could use LeBron and other influencers and their groups to get the word out to our people in Galveston, right? Florida is the new Galveston, and we need to get that one in this age of technology. Come on, think about it, man. They took 2 years. They didn't have Twitter and Instagram, right? And we're taking 2 years, and we got all of that. So that means we need to step our game up, right, to get that word out, and we need influencers to do so, to let our people know that they are free, and if they have any obstacles in their way to prevent them from getting that freedom, that FRRC is here, standing at the ready to pay those fines and fees off so they can register to vote and they can have their voices heard in what we all know is the most critical election that this country has ever seen.
Gina,
awesome.
Yes, Gina, I know you were wanting to also share.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. But, James, you were talking about support and network. And, I am not shy to say that this shit costs money. And these are our day jobs. And sometimes when you were talking about the arts, I just want to just say, you know, the arts are really quite transformative and used as a tool to educate folks and to empower people. It's really quite transformative and amazing. I think sometimes people have trouble investing in the arts because it's not a tangible company per se, you know, unless it's an arts company. But you know what I mean? It's like an event that uses art, that pays artists, is like it happens in the moment, and then we move on to the next. And so I think we need to reframe how our investment in the arts looks and what it really means, because it's hard to quantify the impact. It's hard to quantify when you're moved by a song or a film or a piece of art, what it will invoke in you and inspire you to then do. And so I think that it's been proven over and over, yet people, I guess, have more of a look at the arts in many ways as a campaign, you know, as it's not like something that will live on in some tangible way. And so I'm just hoping that when, you know, when people really think about the ways that they can participate, every fucking penny counts. I don't care if you give $2. One of the things I used to say, oh my God, my New York just came right out of me when I said that. I was like, $2.
Sure did. Such a fucking New York statement.
No, for real though, because to have that participation gives the person who gives that $2 a little bit at stake. And there is a feeling that happens when you give money. You feel somehow like you have a voice and you're part of it too. And it should feel the same way when you step up and vote. Voting should feel so powerful and amazing that I know how I feel after I vote. I feel like, yes, shit, I am a part of this. And it's one of the things that we share all together for the most part. So that's why it's really important to repatriate those whose voices have the opportunity to be heard. And a lot of folks were inside when a lot of these bills got shifted and stuff changed, so they don't know, and their families don't know, you know. And I almost feel like there's so many laws we need to shift that are like little things, like about state IDs, or what you really get when you exit prison after being inside for so long. You know, the other thing I wanted to talk about and let you know, including the arts and the other collaboration I'm doing with Creative Acts, is we're creating VR experiences and VR opportunities for men and women who are inside doing upwards of 10 years to have VR opportunities to see, because many folks, they get released into the city and they're back and it's like they're on Mars. You know, their neighborhoods are not the same. Gentrification has happened. Automation has happened. And, you know, some folks get lucky and go into spaces, transitional housing or spaces, or find connection, but many don't. And they go straight back into the very triggers that afforded them the opportunity to go to prison in the first place. And it's important that we invest, just like we want to do preventative medicine and how important preventative medicine is, and healthcare and our mental health. We want to prepare our returning citizens because they're coming home. And the cycle of going back into prison is too high. It's too high, and there's steps that we can take. So we're creating these VR experiences, just like, you know, how to go to DMV again. Although that's probably the only thing that hasn't changed in like 100 years. But just, you know, when you go to a restaurant or when you go to a bathroom now, or the movie theater, there's so many choices, and it triggers a lot of insecurities. And we need to help our returning citizens understand that that they can cope. They can cope back in space and come back home and not feel so alien, literally, to where they are. So there's just so much going on. There's so much to do. There's so much to look up. There's so many organizations that are doing amazing, incredible work. And so I would give our listeners and folks who are tuning in out there the homework to begin to see who in your community, where in your community, or if you have family out of state, or just like Desmond was talking about, pick Florida and invest your time and energy in learning more about how you can support folks on the ground doing this work in many different ways. Because there's arts institutions and spaces like Sankofa.org that is using art as a tool to communicate these messages. And then there's also the way in which we are frontline on the ground. And we were frontline on the ground in Ferguson. We weren't there right away, but we pretty much came pretty quickly with the Dream Defenders in Florida after the murder of Trayvon Martin. And, you know, we want to be able to respond immediately to our communities and use the arts to immediately elevate and shine a light on the message.
For those that may not know your work, Gina, just really quick, talk about Sankofa. I mean, I just think we kind of grazed, and there's been people who have joined late.
Sure. Sankofa.org. So we're a nonprofit organization. We motivate, activate, and educate artists and allies in service of grassroots movements and equitable change. And what that really translates into is that we work with artists who come to us, and we also seek out artists to participate with when we have a specific issue that we want to amplify. And we work with grassroots organizations who are doing the work on the ground, specifically around those issues. And we combine the arts and find ways in which to collaborate so that we can elevate the message. We share the mic. We use the platform of art. We use the platform of influencers to enable us to spread a wider net for people to have a deeper understanding. And we work with grassroots organizations because they, keeping it 100, they're the ones who are really facing off day in, day out with the people on the ground who are systems impacted or impacted in their communities in a way that we're addressing that. We focus on youth incarceration, mass incarceration. We focus on immigration issues, income disparity issues. We're really wanting to find, since we're living in this capitalist society, which is a whole other question. We still need to, as we're transforming it. And by the way, I wanted to go back to something else Desmond said in terms of right now we have an opportunity to galvanize in a way like we never have before. And I feel there should be eyes on the longer prize and a reconstruction period that we need to go through in America. And we need to be diligent, and no matter who takes over the office of the highest space in government for us, we need to apply pressure to hold people accountable, to continue to patriate all of us, because we have to, like I said very early on, have to remember how this country was founded. It was founded on the genocide of Native people and stolen bodies for profit. And that's real, and it's just modernized itself, and it looks a little different, but you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And we have to really call a thing a thing. So I'm kind of like darting around, but Sankofa. So we create, we do music festivals, we create albums, we work in music, we work in film, we have documentary films we have stage plays, we have a great, beautiful hip hop spoken word musical written by Breon Bain that we travel and we use to do town halls after every single show. And we use the visual arts and communicating messages with visual artists. And we work in collaboration with so many arts institutions. We have something going on also currently called Arts Across America in partnership with the Kennedy Center, where we've curated these talks and music events. So that's what Sankofa does. That's who we are. That's what we do. We're carrying on the legacy of my father, Harry Belafonte, who founded the organization. When we went to him and said, please, can we create something that sort of institutionalizes who you are? And he wouldn't let us call it the Belafonte Institute or anything like that, because he's that guy. So he chose a word that just needs a definition, an explanation for those who don't understand it or know it. And I'll give it to you very quickly. Sankofa is a Ghanaian word. It's an Akan Ghanaian word. And its symbol is sort of a metaphor for looking back into the knowledge and the power of our ancestors and bringing that power and knowledge forward in order to go forward and to move into the present time. It's symbolized with a bird in mid-flight with its head turned back, beak open, retrieving an egg from mid-air, symbolizing we have to reclaim what we have left behind. We have to reclaim our ancestors' wisdoms in order to move forward. And we must know who we are and where we've been in order to move forward.
That's beautiful.
James,
And incredible.
James.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Gina did it again, man. You got to give me a minute, bro.
I'll give
Gina
you a
did
minute.
it. It's blame it on her, man.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, blame it on Gina. Gina,
And
once again,
money bail.
it's your
End money
fault.
bail. End money bail.
Gina, she said some things, and as she was talking, man, it was touching me, and I was like, wait a minute, we can't end this without folks understanding exactly who it is that they're talking to, right? Who it is that they're listening to, all right? And it's coming firsthand, right? Yeah. In 2001, Judge Manny Crespo in Dade County looked at me and told me, said, Desmond, the people of Dade County has spoken. And as a result, I remand you to Florida Department of Corrections for 15 years, right? And I worked on my case when I was in there, and I ended up getting that reversal remand. I only did 4, but when I stepped out, I was still incarcerated in my mind because of my drug addiction, and I'm homeless. And before you know it, months after being released in 2004, I found myself in August of 2005 standing in front of railroad tracks, waiting on a train to come so I can jump in front of it. I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel, and I was ready to go. I was hooked on crack cocaine, recently released from prison, unemployed, and the only thing I owned was the clothes that was on my back. And my mother didn't raise me to be there, but there I was, right? And I waited, and I waited, and I waited on that train. But God had other plans. And for some reason or another, I held that train up, and I crossed those tracks, and I checked myself into a drug treatment. And after completing that, I moved into a homeless shelter. And I'll be honest with you, all I wanted to do was not get high anymore, because I knew if I did and end up at railroad tracks, this time I wasn't going to be lucky. And so I enrolled in Miami-Dade College and ended up graduating at the top of my class in paralegal studies, and then pursued a bachelor's in public safety management with a concentration in criminal justice, because I thought that my experience getting arrested and appearing in front of judges was going to be helpful, right? And I ended up graduating at the top of my class and eventually getting accepted into law school, graduating law school, but still can't practice law because my civil rights have not been restored. And it was just in 2018 where I was able to finally get my voting rights back. So Gina, when you talk about that feeling about voting, what you triggered in me was that feeling that I had when I walked in 2 weeks ago. I went to go vote for the very first time in over 30 years. 30 years. And when I was walking in that voting location, I was thinking about my ancestors who were bitten, who were hung, who were burned, who were sprayed with fire hoses, just so I can have this opportunity. And I'm thinking about all those 774,000 returning citizens that may be yearning for this opportunity I was getting ready to experience. And as I walked into that booth and started circling my choices, something overcame me and I experienced a transformation, or maybe it's a paradigm shift that made me understood that I was in a sacred and holy place, that this voting is sacred, and this voting, this thing that I'm doing transcends the partisan politics, transcends all the implicit racial biases, and it takes me to a place that basically says something so simple, that I am. That I am a human being, that I am a citizen, that my voice can and does matter. And I never, ever knew that I could have experienced something like that. And that experience, I think that there are so many folks that are waiting for that. And they don't know what they're going to expect when they get in there. But when they get in there into that sacred and holy place that our ancestors have died and shed blood on this soil for, that I believe that a transformation will occur. And we have to do everything, with every breath in our body, to fight to make sure that every American citizen get at least an opportunity to experience what we experienced, Gina, because that's a special and sacred place. And I do believe that we have our brothers and sisters that's out here in Florida that need to experience that. And when they do, oh, what a new day we're going to see. Oh, what a new day what we're going to see. And so I appreciate you, Gina, even though I'm blaming you for it. I I appreciate you, because these things need to be said, and folks need to understand that it is people like us, people like each and every one of you all, right? That there's some things that you can do that don't even require the sacrifices that our ancestors had to make. Nobody's asking you to stand in front of a baton and get your head split. Nobody's asking you to threaten to have your house burned down or crosses burnt in front of your house. Nobody's asking you to put yourself in the position to get hung by trees or bitten by dogs. What we're asking is far less. It's far less than what our ancestors and our predecessors have had to sacrifice in order for us to be in this moment right now, this very pivotal moment. And so we got to step up. We got to step up our game. And we got to make sure that people are knowing that they're free, and we're supposed to be doing the things that we know that we can do that don't require much of us, right? To make sure that we free democracy in Florida and any other place that they're holding democracy, that we could get to a point that when we do say the Pledge of Allegiance, those last 6 words can finally ring true. And it says, with liberty and justice for all.
Ooh-wee. Everything has been said. There is no more to be said. Maybe we should take the mutes off, Shira. We just hear.
There is one thing to be said. There is one more thing to be said.
Okay.
And let a Black woman end this session.
Okay.
Which is vote. Everyone out there, you need to vote.
Right.
Like your life depends on it. And if you can't vote, help someone who can vote get to the polls. Yeah. Get your mail-in ballot. Find out and make sure you know what dates you have to mail it in by. Make sure you have filled out your census form. That is also another way that you can participate and service us, because that is, I think, one of the highest rights that we have, and our civic duty to comply.
Well said. Thank you, Black woman. I just want to thank you guys. Gina has been a friend of mine. She's an advisor to the Authenticated. She is a force of nature. And just thank you to our new friend, Desmond Meade, who, we're not done with you, Desmond. We got big plans to stay locked into Florida, to stay locked into the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for your time. Before
I have a quick question.
Yeah, can we ask some questions?
Yeah.
I was gonna. One second, let me finish my thought.
Okay.
So we are going to take questions. Absolutely. We want to hear from you. I know everybody's eager to go hear Patti LaBelle and Glass Knight on Instagram Versus, but we will take some questions from the audience, and we want to figure out how everybody can be supportive. Thank you.
Oh, there's another Gina here. So
yeah, I have a quick question. First of all, this is amazing. Thank you so much. And that was just both of you, unbelievable. My question is about Florida. I have 2 questions. One is, how do we get this to be a national law that felons across America can vote, because there are other states where they can't vote? And what can we do to help? And the second is, I don't know if there's any outreach to people like Michael Bloomberg, who says he's going to put $100 million in ads for Florida. Can we just get him to pay off every felon's fee? Or can we get, Jeff Bezos, or, all these Zuckerbergs? I mean, these billionaires who, I just think, like, how much could it be to pay off all the, like, let's just get it done. Like, it must be less than $100 million. I don't know who has channels to Lauren Powell Jobs. Let's just say, hey, pay off all this so all these people can vote, and that will save democracy. So I don't know those people, but anybody who does, please speak to them.
Wow. So let me give you the easy answer first. So when it comes to voting, it's typically states that govern how they want to administer voting. However, you can get a federal law that governs federal elections, right? But that's going to take a bunch of politicians in D.C. to kind of like agree to that or make that happen. But the states are pretty much left to themselves. and they have some very tight parameters. But however, there's some language in the Constitution that could typically, if the states discriminate against people and won't let them vote, then they would lose seats in Congress. However, the one exception is for people with felony convictions. And so slavery and is still alive and thriving because it's in our Constitution. And it allows the state to actually bar us, stripping us of our civil rights because of a felony conviction. And so what we've seen, and we're very optimistic, because after passing Amendment 4, you've seen, like right now in California, Prop 17 is going on to expand voting to people that's on parole. You had some gains in Kentucky with the governor signing executive order re-enfranchising tens of thousands of individuals. We just won a case in North Carolina where tens of thousands of people will be able to vote. And then the governor in Iowa, a conservative governor at that, signed an executive order that allowed people to vote without even having to pay fines and fees. And so it's a growing movement amongst the 50 states. Of course, Maine and Vermont, they don't have any felon disenfranchisement. They let people vote even while they're in prison. And one day we will get to that, but it's a state-by-state effort. And as far as the Bloombergs, listen, send them, y'all send them some tweets, tag them on some posts, and say, drop it like it's hot. Make it rain in Florida and free democracy, right?
How much is it? What's the number we're looking at, by the way?
Let me tell you, if you include restitution, which is probably in about 4% of the cases, you're looking at several $billion. If you take away those 4% of the cases and the restitution that it carries, and look at the remaining 96%, it's between $1 to $2 billion for all of the 774,000 individuals. But we are doing our best. Like I say, Florida is a state, a swing state, a very important one at that.
All of that should be forgiven. It
Yeah.
should be forgiven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to get rid of these fees in this
Yeah.
way. And
We
if
can
you
do
and
it.
if there is something which I hate to say this because I don't want to make suggestions like this way, but if there's some sort of percentage of future earnings, once other shit is clear, that you have to pay off a school loan, which I also think should be forgiven, then the other things should be put forward and other ideas should be created. But these fees need to be forgiven. It is slavery. It is putting the muzzle on the mouth of the community.
Yep.
And generations of family members are affected by it. It's not just like the one person who, they made a bad decision. No, it's their parents, it's their mother, it's their siblings, it's their children, and it's generations of trauma afterward.
Right.
And it needs to be addressed. It's critical.
May I ask a question? On the Bloomberg matter, which just happened, do you have contacts with the Bloomberg people or with the campaign that work?
I think if I had contacts and had influence, I would already have the check.
Okay. So let me say this.
Because if you do,
Bloomberg, let me finish. I'm sorry. Bloomberg has a foundation, and the woman who runs the foundation is very simpatico to these efforts. So if you can't, I don't know what the restrictions are on talking about, but for voter registration, I would encourage you to call the foundation right away or get a message to her about that, as well as potentially deal with the.
What's her name, Jay? Do you have a name on her?
I have to look it up. I'll look it up before we leave. The other piece of this is that do you have a strategy that's fundable that you could do a GoFundMe on or whatever for getting to the people you need to get to? Are there pipelines you can actually think about?
We're all of that.
We could all jump in on.
Yes, we all have that. There's actually, matter of fact, I think I'll put it in the chat. Someone could put it in the chat for me. But we do have a fines and fees fund. We've raised over $5 million. We've paid out a little over $4 million in fines and fees. And so anyone who wants to donate, and it's tax deductible donation. They can donate to our fines and fees fund. And we have a system in place that we have put together and been working on over a year now. We've actually built a Maserati of processes
What's the
that
link?
can
Is there a link?
identify individuals who have outstanding fines and fees. We also have a system that where they request help with fines and fees, and we're able to negotiate with clerk of courts, right? And sometimes even lower the cost, end up paying pennies on the dollar to satisfy those outstanding legal financial obligations. So systems are in place. All we need are people to drive people to donate, and people to drive the people who can be helped. All of the returning citizens, drive them to us. And if those two things can happen in unison, there's a lot that we can do within these last 3 weeks. We only have 3 weeks before registration deadline. And so the time to act is not next week, right? It's not even at the end of the week. The time to act is right now. Folks can text the word fees, F-E-E-S. Jay, matter of fact, you can pull out your phone right now, since you're the one that asked the question. So I'm going to let you be the example. You can pull out your cell phone and you text the word fees, F-E-E-S, to the number 82623. Fees to 82623, and you will be sent a link to where you can donate securely to our fines and fees fund and help free democracy in Florida. And spread that link to your entire network, right? Like Gina said, we said vote. I said don't vote alone. When her dad used to throw these events, right? And I'm going to tell you, nobody went to his events by themselves. They made sure they told their friends, girl, you know Harry Belafonte coming? And there's a whole bunch of friends that would go to the show. If Beyonce's throwing a concert, Gina's not going by herself. She's going to call all her girlfriends and say, let's do this. And so that's the same way we should act when it comes to voting. And it's the same way we should act when it comes to supporting something like this. Don't just donate by yourself. Get your friends, your entire network to donate with you. And if everybody does that, then guess what? We don't need the Bloomberg, right? We're going to do it on our own. We don't have to rely on just one or two rich people to cut a check. No, we can do it on our own. We the people, right? We've gotten this far without them, and we could take it across the finish line without them.
And I wish just it wasn't even an issue. Like, the thing we should be focusing on is voting, not paying fees. So
yeah,
that sucks. That's the thing.
So Jay, I'm looking out for your name. I'm looking out for your name on the donate list. You know that, right?
Is any other questions before we say goodbye? Any other questions, comments? Once again, we will be sending emails, a follow up with all these links, and everything's getting involved. I'll be sharing on my social media as well. And yeah, I know you also, I wanted to just give a shout out to your book, Desmond, Let My People Vote. I know you've been talking about that. You want to show it there. There you go.
And it's the story of my life from when I was in front of those railroad tracks all the way to that triumphant day in November of 2018. And so you all can pre-order this thing on my website at desmondmeade.com. Or go to, I believe, Amazon. Mahogany Books is a Black-owned bookstore, Black-owned bookstore. And I would like to encourage everyone to support Black businesses, especially in the age of COVID. They can go to Mahogany Books and pre-order my book that's going to be released October the 6th of this year.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank both of you. We even have, as we are continuing to talk and ending this, some people joining as it goes, this virtual town hall. But once again, I want to thank